Hello, everyone. I'm Amy Fawn, the chair of MFA Writing, and this is Word World. Our MFA Writing class of 2013 can tell you, probably in great detail, how quickly 2 or 4 years can pass. They arrived in their first August. I had to change that. And while the days and nights of staring in their blank notebooks or computer screens felt long, the semesters have passed faster than any of them could have imagined. They have worked very hard. We, the faculty, have made sure of that. They made an investment to come here to become writers, and we wanted to honor these goals and show and teach them how challenging, invigorating, and transformative the writing life can be. The brief selections you will hear tonight from our talented graduating students represent only a sliver of the amazing work they've accomplished in the last 2 years. This is a culmination of a lot of writing, unwriting, revision, reading, and collaboration, and we are incredibly proud of them. Our first speaker, our first reader, Gabriel Kaufman. Gabriel Kaufman studied film and theater in college with a focus on screenwriting and production. After moving to LA, he wrote screenplays set in crumbling Midwest suburban neighborhoods, held precariously in place by loud, neurotic denizens. During that time, he also held down various jobs in the entertainment industry, ranging from story analyst, involving reading lots of bad scripts, to entertainment PR picador, handling raging cows and bulls. Today, Gabe has space-time jumped into only slightly more cerebral territory, where he divides his labors between consulting and writing fiction about semi-approachable people who react badly to pressure and in terrible ways to complacency. Welcome, Gabriel Kaufman.
Thank you. Hello, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I'd like to start out by thanking Cooley Windsor, John Lesley, Tom Barbash, Ann Marino, Donna, Faith, and Amy, and so many others in the writing program here. What I'm reading tonight is from a novel in progress in which a failed businessman turned part-time private investigator in LA is hired to look for a woman's missing husband. While driving towards South Pasadena, the mother tongue echoes inside my head, and I hear that my father, David Kandinsky, is a very confused, decentered man. The pathetic boy werewolf, Detective Half-Empty, is twice the man that his player is in real life. Mother, that's kind of harsh, isn't it? I'm stuck in rush hour traffic. I stare through the windshield at the back of a minivan, and my mind wanders and I see that my father has downed a couple of drinks already. It is the early afternoon, and I'm visiting him as a kid during summer break for 2 obligatory weeks in South Pasadena. Hello, Charles. He wouldn't have been speaking the words to me. He only spoke at the approximate space-time bubble surrounding me. I was never a real person to my father. An honorary solipsis, he only recognized me as the embodiment of a closed set of ideas and reflections of which his introspection was the only magnetic north. I had no control over whether that delusional, self-obsessed man hated or liked me on any given day. It all depended on how he was feeling about himself. Usually that meant he was feeling like he was stuck inside flashbacks. My father had a large walk-in closet in his apartment that was devoted entirely to hosting empty bags, collector's items from his travels throughout the world on Detective Half-Empty junkets. The empty bag collection displayed the world's many drugstores, banks, grocery stores, parades, trade shows, etc. Not a single photograph or a single download in the collection, just bags: plastic, paper, cloth, leather, and burlap. Each empty bag was hanging by hooks screwed into the wall. All in all, several hundred empty bags hanging from floor to ceiling. Rush hour traffic hasn't moved. I'm still that young boy watching my father ranting in his trained voice, wheezing past the hiccuping thaumatrope of his 1980s, a decade in which I was conceived, probably on a foggy, rainy day during a surreal scene of hypodermics, shot glasses, bongs, and cocaine-dusted mirrors juggling and hitchcocking in slow motion through the lint-filled air inside a Victorian home in San Francisco. In that shared community, there were also smiling, tearful, spontaneous embraces after hearing about startling new technologies like the internet and the Apple that would help give the working man and woman greater access to information and updates. Got IT skills? Step into the new economy, Rosie the Riveter. You're now Carmita the Coder. Dialogue continues to bubble out of my father. He rants from his IKEA rocking chair inside his solitary, minimalist apartment. The divorce. Rush hour traffic and detective half-empty part ways for my mother, who worries that I haven't taken a strong position on the divorce and that I am driftwood drifting. She takes me with her. We have recently moved to San Diego to live with Jaeger Dominic, an oceanographer with ocean blue eyes. Back in South Pasadena, I see the solid colors of my father wearing a long gray silk shirt, white chinos, and red slip-on shoes beneath the spare track lighting in his den, which is empty like the stage of an independent theater, except for his yellow leather rocking chair and piles of haphazardly scattered magazines and books, particularly Nietzsche, covering socialism, paleontology, the sun, volcanoes, mountains, and Napoleon Bonaparte. Really anything arid, anything the antithesis of the ocean. A year or so later, the father will slip on one of those magazine or book piles and fall and snap his neck, accidentally killing himself. At least that was how I, as a boy, was told it happened, but I learned later that the forensics suggested that he starved himself to death, unintentionally, like slipping in a puddle of water, my mother replied when I questioned her about it on my 19th birthday, which followed a freshman year at UCLA that put me on academic parole. After Detective Half-Empty's funeral, I got straight A's and went to grad school. Weird. I'm sitting in my father's apartment on a black, oddly shaped molded chair, drinking soy milk from an old plastic cup that says, "Vote, Reagan, Bush, 1984. I'm at an oval smoked glass dining table that is lit profusely by a tree of Korean paper lanterns hanging from the ceiling. Every so often, I see my father turn and glance at me and look away again, still ranting like a Charlie Brown teacher. I know that if Detective Half-Empty had survived into the 90s and hung on until my adulthood, he would have been horrified to see that I have so much come to physically resemble President Bill Clinton. Your mother climbed out of the Johnson's shallow genetic cesspool in Tampa, Florida, and ran away to California to learn her ABCs real good at Berkeley, so she could try to write poetry about vagina steroids and women in the military having farting contests. That she-devil is the reason why your reflection bears a striking resemblance to that impeached fucktard, William fucking Clinton. I am so sorry, son. Please forgive your dad. All I did was come, and that was all of 90 seconds, if that. Anna, on the other hand, had 9 months to conspire and use active imagination while she was pregnant with you to F up your phenotype while watching Clinton every day on the damn cable news. What a tragedy. Blame your mother. There's cigarette smoke rising from a glass ashtray near his chair. In the ashtray's base, there is an embalmed or embedded photo of the Las Vegas Strip. I'm 10 years old, but he speaks to me like I'm an adult colleague of his from the old days as a writer on a very poorly done adult animated TV series called Detective Half-Empty that somehow managed to run for 9 seasons. Alone, keeping himself isolated after the divorce. My father is muzzled and handcuffed by a commitment to his brand of social action that he made during his 1 year of college when he met my mother at Berkeley. Dad was a freshman, Anna was a PhD candidate. He asked her out. She turned him down, so he dropped out of college and hopped on a plane to London. The one-way ticket he purchased was a voucher for a floozy Americanist attempt to join the RAF, the Baader-Meinhof, a complex of white people terrorism that had dwindled into a footnote by the time he arrived in Europe. Seriously, he would have found more political fervor in following the World Cup at a children's hospital. Crushed by the number of Walmarts, McDonald's, Coke bottles, and obsequiously USA-branded hipsters he saw in Europe, David Kuninsky returned to San Francisco in search of early 1970s Europe and became a fully committed pothead in Noe Valley, living off of royalties from Detective Half Empty, which had become syndicated on cable TV and which apparently impressed my mother. I was drawn in by your father. He was charming and very good-looking in his way, but I was never supposed to end up with David. Maybe that's why I loved him. And also, he loved my southern accent, which only came out when I was angry or horny. Those two used to be the same things to me when I was with David. San Diego is 30 minutes away. The station wagon is loaded full. We're driving below the speed limit. I give my English professor mother a look, both of her hands on the steering wheel, that says, "What are you doing? Stop talking to me like that. I'm a child with a mashed potato brain." Averting her eyes back to the road, she shuts up and smiles. In that moment, her political inertia shifts to the center, and for the first time in her life, she wonders whether I need to participate in team sports. She blurts out, "Charles, you'll like your new school. Have you ever thrown a basketball or used a leather glove to catch a baseball?" It sounded to me like she just asked, should we try subsisting on a diet of bananas and beer for an entire year? Okay, that's it. Thanks. Thank you. Our next reader I want to introduce, her name is Lesley Selcer. She has been working from a book of poems on beauty since 2008. Before that, she was an art writer in Vancouver, British Columbia, and New York City. Parts of this work have appeared in Action, Yes, Try, and in the T10 Video Festival. Anne.
Burnished, wooden, earthen, shadow, shining, glued, a shadow, a book, a suntanned pair of hands, brightening, lit, time is stitched, opalescent, pink, creased. A blackbird flies backwards, a line across the page, silver and clicking, aesthetic, burnished, shadow, shiny, shadow, a suntanned pair of hands, brightening, stitched. A blackbird flies backwards, silver and clicking, brightening and lit, burnished, wooden, earthen, shadow, shining, glued, pink, creased, a line across the page, the shadow, a blackbird, a book. The book of this is dark and compact. It has an ornate cover which is thick, embossed, or encrusted. The book of this has yellowed pages with writing so small it is nearly illegible. The book of this repels its reader. It is physically hard to open, like a weapon. The book of this is so very private. This book looks like reversal. This book has a beauty that's ruined when it's read. This book coordinates each condition of being out of relation. An unaccountable beauty, fecund but not sacred, walks alone along a street in New York City, past a pile of commodity, Italianate, reproductive, rotting, past a gallery of caryatids, past girls manipulating the knobs of a cathartic art, past caneophora bearing transactions in their baskets, past a vanishing metaphysical realm, the bird, the vase, the book, unable now to justify or account for the weight of their own beauty, past machines blowing bubbles in a room walled in mirrors, past dayladies speaking of their travels, the light kindly buoying the undersides of their public play, past a chamber of chaste girls encased in silver and looking through mirrors of chrysolite, carbuncle, sapphire, and emeralds, past a million images of the self, venerated, fed back to the self, past the notion of photographic absence, then the real disappeared, past Walt Whitman's pile of limbs, past buildings falling, caryatids with broken necks, past a mass of metal, a tract of land, a number of slaves, past a pile of stones, a human body of certain lineaments, past a solid wall of caryatids, an army. Oh, the young girl, that receptacle of shameful secrets, sealed in her own beauty. Beauty is languaged in the domain of the Father. Fronding and intricate, ruined with color, if property creates meaning, then a landlord is a baroque and overgenerative thing. Pigment stacked into tall rows, permanence and significance, terrestrial plentitude and distribution, color slung into rings. Ownership is abstraction's embrace, and this dynamic female form, pink washed at the bottom, green escaping its line. The terms of the social are the limits of the social. Is it beauty before it's privatized? The world of abstraction is a world of surfaces. They are its only sociality. As for correspondences, the administration said send to, which we refused. I said we should all go. A mother makes a book of every dream she's had for a week and mails each book to her child who's been dreaming of her. From the ritual paper money she is forbidden to touch, a Chinese woman makes 100 books. She takes the stack to washing day. She meticulously launders each. A woman bears her fruit, then becomes an actual tree. A pile of sewn books out in the jail yard, sprayed with water by the guard. My mother was a secret house, a new round of enclosures. Adriatic, Gallia, Algerian, Atago. Magic seemed a refusal of work. Bella Hart, Betty Ann, Bergamot, Black, Black Amber, Black Beauty, Black Globe, Black Pearl. The world had to be disenchanted. Angel, Aprium, Arkansas Black, Athena, Baldwin, Apricot. Sexual activity transformed into work. Black Currant, Black Rochelle, Baby Bear, Catalina, Cherry Moya, Crimson Red, Crab Apple, Clementina, crimson glow. Complicity and repulsion, negation and exorcism. Red delicious, Dauncey, d'Anjou red. Ellendale, crimson, crimson sweet. A daily labor of autopoiesis, birth out of wedlock, rejection of marriage, medicines reformulated into perfumes. In this large and most beautiful house, elephant heart, bar high, black raspberry, black sugar cane, canandria, canary. Cardinal, Concord, crimson Pharrell, Bartlett, Babcock, blackberries, Calimyrna, cello blood, Arerian, Athena, Amagaki. My mother was a feral house, ambrosia, apple pear. Ice-caked, falling water, compression, clarity. If colors are the deeds and sins of light, this is light caught sleeping. Green abases to gold, red deepens to rouge. A hillside becomes painterly, its grass turns ochre, expires into solidity. A postcard series, the sky painted blue, the grass painted green. Cold and colorful, the work is a machinery of distancing and contact. Conceptually based sequences shot north, west, northwest, southeast. Ice-caked falling water, compression, clarity. Red deepens to rouge, gold abases to green. A machinery of distancing and contact. The mirror is the brightest color. The mirror strikes light. I have two more. What proliferates in absence, distance, and is behind every word. What sounded like lions, but were rips, splices, the invisible straining towards convexity. How heaven and death are concurrent, and beauty is a way to appear. I want to be light like a blackbird, but I am heavy like air. I come to it with everything that is not form, and begin to think of beauty as art's vestige, up there in the poem, a city loosened, a city stilled. Thank you. This is Julian Quisquater next, as introduced by Frank Weisberg, who's an MFA writing alum from 2011. Over the last 4 years, this next writer has worked tirelessly to ensure he graduated 2 years behind his fellow classmates. This is a rare feat at CCA where no one gets any grades and only one person has ever failed. You could say this makes him the exception, and by extension, exceptional. This next writer has a certain way about him. He reminds me of a dodo. He seems like he belongs here in this strange place, but you can't imagine why he exists. And though there's a lot of him to go around, you worry if you take more than you need, he'll be gone altogether. He has a certain look about him, too. I happen to like his face, to be honest with you. It's mean, with a hint of guilt in it. He looks like the kind of guy who would beat you up when you were a kid and buy you an ice cream after. None of us here tonight are sure what we're about to hear, but we can be sure about something. We know whatever we're about to hear will come from the writer's heart, where his best and worst ideas come from, where his best and worst self lies. Unlike the rest of us, this writer isn't bound by insecurities. He doesn't care what you think about what he says. He only cares that you know he meant it. I will always remember those times when there were 3, and I will forever carry with me and reflect fondly upon moments I shared with this next darling. How could you not? You tell me how you feel after this bearded, silky cherub takes the stage and opens his mouth. See if you don't love him too. Without further ado, please welcome to the stage the usurper, son of Papa Jack, Princess of Jewels, Julian Quisquater.
I don't know if I can top Frank's intro, so just please be patient. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to single out a couple people initially. The faculty that I've worked with that have helped me get here in 4 years instead of 6. Cooley Windsor, Kevin Killian, Shanti Sekaran, Tom Barbash, Caroline Goodwin, Hugh Bem Steinberg, John Lasky, the legend. And then thank you particularly to my thesis committee, Gloria Frim and Ann Marino, who's been with me since the beginning. I took my first class with her, and she stuck with me till the end for all 4 years. Thank you. Thank you to all my friends and coworkers for coming out. And not last, but certainly not least, my lovely family, who have also been very patient with me. So I'm pretty tired of looking at my thesis, so I'm going to read what I write when I'm tired of looking at my thesis. I just write nonfiction, and I feel like it helps me write concisely because it's all true, and it's much easier than making shit up. So, all right. So these are like a series of vignettes that I strung together about my family. So, I'll start with the first one. 2011. This is my first visit to a hospice. I open the sterile metallic doors on the exterior of the building and enter a secure waiting room. A woman at the front desk looks me up and down and asks if I'm lost, in Flemish. I'm drenched in sweat and carrying a 50-pound backpack that I've hauled over a mile in 90-degree heat from Antwerp Central Station. She may be presumptuous, but I don't blame her. I look like a tourist trying to find his hostel. I tell her I'm here to see my grandfather, in English. She smiles and apologizes for the mistake. I tell her I'm here to see Raymond Quisquater, and she buzzes me in, directing me to room 205 on the first floor. Floor 0 is the 100s in Belgium. I find my way to the room, and the door is open. My grandmother, Mimi, is sitting next to Raymond's bed, feeding him with a spoon. I'm already uncomfortable. It's difficult for me to process how pathetic and weak Raymond looks. We come from a family of proud, self-reliant, and opinionated men. I idolize my father, he idolizes his father, and no one idolizes a person who eats Gerbers 3 times a day. My father warned me how far gone Raymond was, but it didn't set in until I saw the skeletal shadow of the man. I put down my bag to give Mimi a big bear hug. Despite the distance and the infrequence of my visits, we've always been very close. I walk over to Raymond's chair and take his hand in mine. He reclines, and I realize that he doesn't know who I am. I say, "Raymond, it's Julian from America." He takes a moment to process and looks at me suspiciously with milky, cracked eyes like broken marbles, and he smiles. Raymond is a bottomless pit of World War II knowledge. I spent my childhood delving through volumes of his history books in Flemish, French, German, English, even other languages that in my ignorance I was incapable of recognizing. Raymond and I rarely ever spoke, even before his health deteriorated, but when we did, it was always about World War II. I try to rekindle those conversations with Raymond while he lays in his hospital bed. He's heavily sedated. I suppose the end is fitting, considering that as long as I've known him, Raymond has always been a man of few words, instead choosing to spend his days engrossed in the pages of history, always reading, never writing. A historian who hoards knowledge meticulously, but kept it all for himself. Whether his unwritten tomes would have made a contribution to the society of scholars that chronicled World War II, I don't know. But I would like to think that his stoic, silent demeanor is an indication of the tireless work and investigation of things that may ultimately be better left unsaid. We sit in silence. Raymond used to speak fluent English, but as age and senility set in, we were all grateful that he at least maintained a mastery of his native tongue. I don't mind. Although we don't speak, I feel proud sitting by his side. An attendant walks in and Mimi tells her that I'm her grandson and that I'm a sports writer from America. I'm normally modest about my fledgling writing career, but Mimi's praise comes around once in a blue moon, so I take the compliment without reservation. The attendant tells us the visiting hours are over. and that we need to leave. As I walk out of the room, I turn back to Raymond in an attempt to lighten the somber mood and tell him, Raymond, when I get back to America, I'm going to spread the Quisquater seed. He doesn't understand. He doesn't understand, so Mimi walks back and translates in his ear. He smiles, appreciating my jest, and responds in a gargled Flemish. Mimi and I reach the hallway, and I ask her to translate Raymond's words. She looks at me apologetically and replies, he said you better, or his name dies with you. Raymond is my grandfather, and he is not an affectionate man, so everyone calls him Raymond. 1938. Raymond and his best friend are swimming in the Schelde, a large river that snakes its way between Antwerp's downtown and industrial sectors. Raymond is 15 years old. Unexpectedly, a canal boat passes by and Raymond's friend is struck in the femoral artery by the propeller. Raymond swims to the shore with his friend in tow. His friend bleeds to death in Raymond's arms before he gets there. Raymond claims this was the first moment at which he determined he was a self-described fatalist. Raymond has never told me his friend's name. 1944. Raymond is working for the U.S. Army as a civilian communications officer as part of the Allied effort to retake France. Every day, Raymond rides in a jeep from Antwerp to an Allied military base in St. Nicholas with a Native American soldier named Indian Joe. Every evening, they ride back to Antwerp together. On one particular evening, Raymond declines the ride to stay and finish some translation. On his way back to Antwerp, Raymond finds pieces of a jeep and pieces of Indian Joe. Raymond clears out Indian Joe's belongings from the base, all of which he sends back to Joe's family in the United States, except for a bomber jacket, which he keeps for himself. 1960. When Jacques is 9 years old, Raymond takes him to the Singsefour in Antwerp. The Singsefour is a large festival held every summer in Antwerp's Port Plaza, with carnival rides and food stands. The occasion is Jacques' first look into his father's life outside the family, a coming of age, an induction. Jacques meets Raymond's drinking buddies. There's Carlo Nines, an ex-Belgian paramilitary who picks fight at every occasion. Andre Nelis, a world-renowned Finn dinghy-class sailor who won Olympic silver in '56 and bronze in 1960. And Raymond the Suave, the playboy of the bunch who shuns family life and fucks anything he can get his mitts on. Not to be confused with Raymond Quisquater, my grandfather. As a 9-year-old, Jacques' primary interest at the Singsefour is riding the Ferris wheel and the merry-go-round, which Raymond is happy to oblige. But the destination of the occasion is the boxing tent. Jacques is intimidated by Raymond's friends, but they all instill him with a sense of confidence. They tell him about girls and stories from the war, and it makes Jacques feel older. After all, Raymond has brought him along. He is one of the boys, his father's son. Jacques knows his mother disapproves. At the beginning of the evening, a match is contested between the tent champion and a random challenger from the audience. The challenger miraculously defeats the champion and wins a large sum of money. The crowd erupts. The defeated champion regains his feet, and the ring announcer offers anyone in the audience a chance at the battered champ. An opportunity to slay an already wounded lion. In an attempt to impress his girlfriend, a genuine crowd member volunteers. He falls for the bait, steps into the ring, and gets knocked out. No money. He is the first, but more follow. Other inspired contenders from the crowd volunteer, and each goes down against the champ. Everyone in the audience now realizes that the initial random volunteer from the crowd who beat the champ is in on the scam. The champ is the real deal, a boxing pro. No random call-up from the crowd can hope to beat him. Carlo Nines doesn't care. Carlo Nines is an ex-Belgian paramilitary. He volunteers and steps into the ring. Carlo Nines isn't interested in impressing his girlfriend. He's fighting for the fucking money. Carlo Nines knocks out the champ, for real. The crowd erupts. The ring announcer takes his arm and holds it in the air, proclaiming him the champion. Carlo holds out his boxing glove and asks for the money. The announcer is stunned and the jig is up. He can't pay. He won't pay because no one ever beats the champ. But Carlo Nines was boxing champion in the Belgian military. He knew he would win. They all did. All the boys, except Jacques. Carlo Nines steps out of the ring and meets Raymond Quisquater, Andre Nelis, and Raymond the Suave in the crowd. Jacques watches as they converse. Raymond tells him to go outside the tent and wait. Jacques can hear the ring announcer try to entice another crowd member into the ring as the champion staggers to his feet. It doesn't matter. The jig is up. Raymond and the boys tear the tent apart, and the crowd follows suit. 1994. I am 9 years old. My family crosses the Bay Bridge from Oakland to see the Christmas tree at Union Square. As we turn down a street looking for parking, a Mexican guy kicks my dad's two-door Mazda pickup truck. There are 5 other guys with him. Dad slams on the brakes, gets out of his truck, and chases them down the block. I watch from the back seat as Dad disappears around the corner. Well, Dad is gone. Mom cries in the passenger seat, and my younger sister cries in the back seat. I convince myself that I'm not worried. We wait for Dad to return, and my mom does her best to pretend that everything is okay. I'm old enough to realize that it's not. Dad is gone for 5 minutes. It feels like eternity. Dad comes back. Dad is fine. I ask him what happened, and he tells me, I chased them till I caught one, and then I kicked his ass. I know my mother disapproves. Dad parks the truck. We get out and walk towards Union Square. On the way there, we run into the same group of guys. I expect Dad to fight them. I want Dad to fight them. The guy who kicked the truck walks up, and Dad says, hey, man, we don't have any problems. Dad nods. They walk away. We go to see the Christmas tree. Dad isn't interested in money. Dad fights for pride. I'm in awe. My sister is scared, and my mom is pissed off. Jacques is my father, and Dad is a term of endearment, so I call him Dad. 2001. My favorite thing to do at my grandparents' house in Belgium is snoop. The walls of their foyer and living room are covered with old paintings that look expensive, and behind every closet door and shelf are shelves with incredible stuff that I secretly plan on inheriting. I always stay in Dad's old room. Everything is green: the walls, the curtains, the bed sheets, the closet doors. Inside the closet, I find a jacket. It weighs about 20 pounds and is made of thick leather with heavy wool on the inside. On the shoulder, it says Pall Mall, like the cigarette company. It looks like something a fighter pilot would wear in World War II. I pull the jacket off the hanger and try it on. It makes me feel invincible. I parade off to the room my parents are staying in to show it off. My dad looks at me. So you found Raymond's jacket? Yeah, it's awesome. What's it for? It's a flak jacket. The bombers in World War II didn't have pressurized cabins, so the gunners on the planes would wear these to stay warm and to protect themselves from shrapnel. Can I keep it? Probably not. I know your cousin Thomas has had his eye on it for years, but whatever you do, don't ask Raymond for it. Why not? Dad doesn't need to respond for the truth of his statement to have the desired effect. He's not going to tell me why, but he knows I'll listen. I walk out of the room, return the jacket to the closet, and head downstairs to devise a way of tactfully acquiring it. My grandparents have a 120-pound Bouvier named Zana that never gets walked. Raymond couldn't walk her if his life depended on it. One tug of the leash and he would topple over. I find him reading at his desk. Raymond, do you want to take the dog for a walk? No, he says. His tone is somewhere between indifference and annoyance. Okay, I'm going to go take her for a walk. I run upstairs, get the jacket off the hook, and put it on. I run back downstairs and make a point of putting the leash on the dog directly in front of Raymond's desk so that he will see me wearing his jacket. He doesn't notice. I do this for a week. Every day I ask if he wants to walk the dog, and the answer is always, no. But every day I continue to ceremoniously put the jacket on in the hope that he will notice. On my last night in Belgium, my grandmother serves my favorite meal, the cheese plate. It's a giant wooden slab with every cheese you can possibly imagine. Firm, soft, stinky, odorless, moldy. She's got it all. Each piece sits with a toothpick in it with a little white flag at the top. The flags are numbered from 1 to 3, depending on the strength of the cheese. The idea is that you don't eat a 3 before a 1 because you'll spoil your palate and won't be able to taste the other ones. I gorge myself on wine and cheese, and as the night rolls on, I begin to worry. There isn't much time. Dinner ends, and I take initiative by volunteering to clear the table and clean the kitchen. My cousins and sister join in. Raymond calls me over, and in his frail old man voice says, Julian, do you like my jacket? I love it, I tell him. Good, he says. It's yours. My cousin Thomas stares at us from across the room. I go back to cleaning the kitchen, clumsily knocking things over because I refuse to take off my prize. Thank you, guys. So now I have the pleasure of introducing our next reader. Maggie Heaps is from McLean, Virginia. She loves pizza, cats, and her darling fiance. Her goal for this evening is to not throw up. Ladies and gentlemen, the lovely Maggie Heaps.
Oh, hi. First, I'd like to do some thank yous. I'd like to thank all my peers in this program. We got lucky with a really special, smart, and badass batch of students. I genuinely, I'm getting choked up. I genuinely love you all and cannot imagine what I'm going to do and write without you. I'd also like to thank my lovely friends and family. Dad, I'm looking at you. For being here tonight. I'd also like to thank Matt Shears, Matt Airbairn, Tom Barbash, Juvenal Acosta, Al Young, Donna, I'm not going to attempt it, but Donna, Kevin Killian, Hugh Ben Steinberg, Joseph Lease, you've been wonderful and inspirational, and my heart, Miss Denise Newman, you've been divine. Thank you. Finally, I'd like to thank my fiance, Ben. I know I've been a crazy person for the last 2 years, and though I can't say I won't be for the next 2 or 20, you've coped amazingly well, and I love you, and thank you for it. Making it. 1. Say it, Robin. Top, top, top. 2. Burn my scotch. Call it baptismal. Leave enough. Pull it. 3. An angle, please, to spell it. Demons, bees, comb these guts. 4. I don't have father's mind. I'm all feathers, all spangle dress, light lifting. 5. Mention water. Trees are out there, making woods, forsaking words. 6. His hands were convincing. Diogenes growls petty. Something pretty, something pretty. 7. Take a seat, take your time, take the tooth from your mouth, stake out. 8. Butter on the tongue, let's corkscrew, ribs dance with cages. 9. Dangle it like cured meat, strung up just for you. No one cares for clever, I did it barefoot anyway. 10. I love you, I tell you, neighbors burn limbs. 11. Hate that peacock worship, he lines lungs soundproof. They lined up, line up, hum and hum alike. 12. When crows notice, when it is warm, when I can't open, when my hands are palms. 13. When the drum doesn't, when someone shatters, when a man is at the door, when a man is at the window. 14. See pink, then again, then again. 15. Something gold and wrong, I don't have that gift. I will eat the oranges the same. 16. That I hang, buttoned in, hinges slipped light, me, the moth queen. Sorry. Thanks, guys. Careful not to spell. Here's where I get weird and fuss like I'm debit. Someone always says once. Someone says once I bit into a noun and found a noun. Once the skirt said, what decade is this? Glass 2 becometh the native tonguing. It's 9 p.m. and you can't say spool. What are you doing, San Francisco? I need a last line, sign on, goddammit. Glass 3 makes my paper Spain a little. Hold on, I promise to keep you. Once I won a ribbon medal, milk for a year. I verbed this girl so hard she asked forever, and we're all ears to hear about that bitch. I'm just a glass deep and nod to the rib. School of. Wound with wool, with knuckles, dumb thumb, I loosened, avec. Sticks, slow chime, Double-headed U, incorrect use, one that is usually struck, strike. I swish circular, resonant, struck together, you, toy trumpet. You, hammer, thunder, thunder. I, machine rain. Prong you, anvil, bell, or cup, felt spur, felt choke. Poured water, you, pop gun, C, flessatono. Bending steel to change to pitch, I foil, rattle, struck, bloom, unusual. You, thumb roll, I play by shaking, knee rubbed, closed. You, ring of bells. I allow teeth to rattle, bloom each, the tongue plucked, muted, you, I, the sound of a walking horse, lit. Nightingale call you, I hail, play bloom, with water and blown discernible. You, no vibrato, only control, or I, open pedal, C, brass, snare, bloom, pear, you, dampen. Looks like. Go on, spade up. Laughter was never an issue, even in that photo, that mare's neck. You give off edges of pond, ether nature there and not. In stone, voice of something sacred, echo of lecture halls, ever wincing, no hands, not now, just boy and girl. It was hay-fed love. All night and in love as it beat and beat to rid itself of cards, of games, to rid itself of faces pressed and kindling, dog-eared corners, loosen and let go of necks. No one's there, looking inexplicable, living against windows. Snow falls cellular, litters little by little, and that mare's neck is left with the trees doing all the explaining like an addict all night and in a pinch to call it love. Swept the floors into each other. You didn't know when to say, voila. Just tired arm and quickly naked, sex like testifying, go on, play. Each heart the sound one, so free of flesh, permissive clatter, in those woods, in that photo, no handles and the lightest touch, all ether breath and love, all love, always love. I see the resemblance now, a lighted ship on a pond. Come with me. Open slip. Open slip. When I'm not a room, I face the ocean. Pear, sharp walls for water. Arc and gust, fruit fallen. I smell of dirt, of dahlias, of hopscotch vodka. I taste ginger, clip your gills. When I'm not a room, I face the ocean. You make smoke, you crane away. Prism sentence. Clovered, offered, rendered, redone. Oh, ranger, lowly, yeah. Lean, obscene, money in the mouth. Balloon in lieu of buffalo. Go on, Galapago, indifferent. Let's. So this is my last one, and I'd like to invite my fiance, Ben, to come up here and help me read it. And hurry so it's not awkward. Good. Mysteries of science. She was he.
The sex is good.
No.
Is important.
Then she.
Loves you.
Her needle speech.
Paramount.
Riddles.
Get rid of it.
Phrase.
Cups.
Pillow milk.
In the sink.
He cups an ear.
Laughter.
Or two.
Laughter.
A dog.
Compensation.
These moth.
Reach for.
Iron weeks.
Pools.
These queer.
Strong arm.
Blue geese.
Invade my brick.
This place with a roof. She means these.
Music a must.
Says.
Hum and drum.
You're just.
Justice.
My.
Just.
Type.
Touch my face.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Now I have the pleasure of introducing Miss Liz Mayorga, as introduced by the darling Vernon Keeve III, MFA Writing Candidate 2013. California needed a voice because California needed to speak. It needed to tell the stories of the people that were here when the golden hues of the landscape were valued more than the golden nuggets within it. It needed to speak of a time when the primordial peoples of that landscape prospered in a vast garden that spanned the entire western coast down into the warm cradle of Mexico, a paradise without borders, a haven that was called something synonymous to home by more than 100 native languages with numerous dialects. California needed to speak of the wars that made those tongues sound the same. The voice of California needed to be seasoned by time, and it needed to be able to recognize the structures that were placed around the peoples that survived California's history. And the voice needed to grasp the people of today that are drawn to California for what history has made it. The voice of California needed to exist from the experiences of the landscape after time, and man had manipulated and confined it into a defined state of matter. The voice that California needed before it was given its name, and the voice that California needs today, is the very voice that belongs to Liz Mayorga, for she will remind California of a time when it was one and the same with the country of her kindred, Mexico. She will remind California of a time before Mexico even had a name. She will remind California of a time when people spoke in many tongues but still managed to survive without borders. Without further ado, the lovely Liz Mayorga.
I hope I can do that introduction justice.
Still says Maggie Heaps.
Oh, awesome, thanks. So first of all, I'd like to thank my teachers and my colleagues. This experience has been amazing. I'd like to thank Shanti, Carolyn, Cooley for giving me my first fiction workshop, Anne, Amy Thon, Claire Chafee, Eric Olson, the illustration department, because I've kind of milked it for all it's worth. And that includes Adam, Owen, and Chris Kaler, who's also on my thesis committee, Rebecca Bloyd, and of course, Matt Zillity for recruiting me, and the SF Zine Fest crew. You guys have pretty much all changed my life. This is a piece from my thesis called Coyotl. This particular section I titled Summoned. The bell tower rung, ding dong, ding dong, ding ding ding, and its brass tune echoed throughout Agua Santa. It played every 15 minutes. The longer tunes marked the hour and announced mass. I ignored each ring until the cool wind introduced the night, until I was safe to walk beneath the street lamps, because those who saw me assumed I was a stranger summoned by war, and I preferred to remain a blank face. So I hid within the catacombs deep inside El Sagrado Corazón, a church that used to be an orphanage before the civil wars, before I heard the praise, Viva la Revolución, or Viva Cristo Rey. Before the bells had metered the night, turned into an incoherent song, before pictures of men, wanted dead or alive, fell from the walls and crowded my feet. Before the civil wars, this place was full, but then the government closed the orphanage, and soldiers continued to attack the church. One night, one of the old classrooms was set on fire. It was empty, yet the smell of death remained in the air the next day. I trailed that iron scent, expecting to see the priest, nun, or any poor soul smashed beneath a caved wall. Instead, I heard a shuffling of bricks and stones and a child's voice. I peeked through the broken walls between the courtyard and the cemetery and saw 2 children, 1 boy, 1 girl, dressed in the old uniform of dark blue and white shirt. Both had thick black hair to go with their copper skin and were thin, very thin. I thought they were ghosts. The boy sat on a bench huddled over a piece of paper with a fountain pen in hand. The girl, slightly older, about 11, walked back and forth between the courtyard and the tarnished classroom. She argued with her brother, urging him to help, promising him that if they did what they were told, their father would come for them that very night. But he ignored her. He moved his pen back and forth, dragging it throughout the page. When the wind threatened to pull his parchment away, he forced it down with one arm and kept drawing with the other. Parts of the monastery were still falling apart, and yet the boy protected sheets of paper. The girl passed by him and looked over his shoulder. "It looks like a monster," she said, and then continued picking up pieces of brick off the floor. "He protects us at night," he said, as she threw one of the bricks across the yard. If the pieces were small enough, she collected a handful and then worked on her aim. She tried to hit the top of the crumbled wall by me. The girl threw one piece at a time and watched it as it crashed, then skipped down the pile of debris. "You see, Layla, angels need to be tough so they can protect us. And this angel used to be a warrior." A warrior, I thought. I imagined his warrior looked like the men whose faces were posted on every street. The boy followed his sister, waving his drawing in front of her, but she kept collecting fragments of porcelain, glass, clay, wood, bricks, stones, and walked away from him. "You see this?" He pointed to the finger in his picture. "His hands are big and skinny, and his nails are so long, he could poke your eyes out without even touching your face." She shook her head. "Why would I want that thing around me?" "He won't poke your eyes out, Layla. Just Miguel's." This time, she used all of her strength to lunge a brick over the wall and into the graveyard. It barely missed my head. "And you see how skinny he is? That's so he can run fast." "Stop telling stories, Chilo. If we don't finish cleaning the walkways before it gets dark, Sister Irene is going to get mad." He walked back to the bench. "She's not our mother, and she's not that scary." The Mother Superior was that scary. She wore a black habit and a coronet over her head. At night, her pale face glowed in the dark. If this child was not a ghost, he was faking courage, and I admired his arrogance, but Layla did not. "If you cry and fall, I'm not going to help you." "I'm not going to fall," he said. Layla turned towards the graveyard. "Chilo, if we get into trouble and Sister Irene kicks us out, where will we go?" He kept his head down, refusing to respond, failing to notice his sister struggling as she carried a window frame towards the pile. As she walked closer to me, I smelled her sweat, the oil in her hair, the poignant smell of puberty, and a secret she held within herself. It was her scent that drew me out that day. She bled but showed no wounds. Though her face turned red from exhaustion, something else bothered her, and her brother was oblivious to it. I found it hard to imagine a young blooming girl approaching a priest or a nun with questions of adolescence. Layla dropped the wooden frame on the ground. The wind pushed her hair over her shoulder, and she closed her eyes, turning her hands into fists. I understood her loneliness, but that was not enough to keep me still. Her essence made it difficult for me to think or reason. My arms started shaking, like they normally did when I felt someone's breath. She and her brother were very alive, and soon the impulse to grab them would take over me. I dug my nails into the dirt until I felt the grain scraping my skin. I knelt down and placed my head on the ground, listened to the wind pushing against the grass and leaves around me. I wasn't sure what it was telling me, but I couldn't help but propel myself against the wall. My nails clawed into the bricks, just when Chilo's voice broke the silence again. "Coyote," he said, and I felt my bones shiver. "What?" Layla asked. "Coyote," he repeated. My skin crawled. My hands scratched the bricks as he shook. That word, coyote, coyotl, so ancient, so familiar, and even though I had heard it a million times before, it irked me to hear Chilo say it. That's my warrior. He protected his tribe. He's here now, so we don't need to go anywhere else. Layla placed her hands over her stomach. A crease appeared on her forehead before she snapped. Angels have white wings and perfect skin. They sit on clouds and reach the stars. They're not crazy, demonic men like yours. He's not a demon, Chilo said. Don't you know what demons look like? Do they have dirty feet and a wild imagination? He took another piece of paper from his pocket and scribbled on the page. Demons have horns, bat wings, hooves, red skin, and a long, sharp tail. Your protector has blood on his face, and he's a dirty Indian. How do you know your angel's not a demon? I felt the tension increase, not just between the children, but all around me. The wind became stronger, and I wanted it to take me away. I tried so hard to remain a ghost, and this child was making that impossible. But maybe he didn't see me. Maybe it was all make-believe. After all, that's what children do. They create what they want to see. The sun disappeared. It wasn't long before the church bells intruded the night. Ding, dong, ding, dong, ding, 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 dong. Layla covered her ears. It was 6. The final mass was about to begin. So Chilo rushed to put his drawings away. When he lifted his head, he saw his sister crying, got up, clasped his arms around her. The two held each other in the patio as the wind swept the ashes off the ground and circled gray dust around them. The bells kept ringing. Ding, dong, ding, 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 dong. No one watched them. No one claimed them. I thought about claiming them for myself, but I froze. Their embrace clashed the echo of that tower, and all I could hear was that endless song that marked time and yet didn't, because time didn't seem to change. It was one war or another. As the song started to wane, Layla pushed her brother aside and signaled towards the church. He glanced at the loose bricks, but Layla urged him to run into the sacristy. He skipped and ran at the same time, reminding me of a goat. His hair flopped in the air with every step. He didn't notice that the papers fell out of his pocket, but Layla saw them dancing on the floor. But instead of picking them up, she stared at them from a safe distance. She stared, and I saw her face change when she allowed the wind to carry her brother's drawings away. Violent angels thrilled him, but I knew they would haunt her dreams just as much as they would haunt mine. Whenever people felt lost, they found refuge in stories about saviors. They turned to faith to redeem the humanity that had failed them. They searched for angels where there were none. That day, my instinct to kill became conflicted by curiosity. Something told me Layla and Chilo weren't meant to be ghosts, and much to my dislike, neither was I. The wind always blew his drawings in my direction. They found me, forced me to pay attention. They were unspoken prayers that spoke to me. On that night, I held 2 drawings in my hands, and I heard an echo of Layla's voice. How do you know your angel's not a demon? She was right to ask. Thanks, guys. And now it is my pleasure to introduce James Kettner. James Kettner grew up in the hills of Westchester, New York, and is a staunch supporter of mutant rights. He draws words, writes pictures, drinks a lot of coffee, and does pretty much whatever a spider can. And I have to add this for my own sake. When I first met Kettner, he was wearing a BPRD shirt and drinking coffee out of a punked out tin mug. And I knew we would be friends for life. It was a relief to see another comic book nerd on board in the writing program. He's been a huge influence on me. It's inspiring to be around someone who's so hardworking and genuine. He's got this contagious, positive energy that consistently seeps into his work. His novel, Rabbit, is full of crazy characters that you learn to love, and it moves with excitement. It's influenced by superheroes and punk culture and pulp classics, and it's obvious that Kettner really loves his work. I feel super lucky to have him as a friend and colleague, and it's my honor to introduce Jim Kettner.
Liz Mayorga, guys. Wow, I don't know how I'm going to follow that. That just looks so boring compared to all that awesome stuff. So I don't look really punk right now, but I promise you the sweater's just to hide the pit stains. I still have the mug. Geez Louise, we're off to a great start. I guess I'll thank people. I lucked out. CCA was the best last minute decision I ever made. I had applied early, and then I didn't finish the application, and then they're like, no, we want you to come. And I was like, they were like, yeah, but you have 48 hours to decide. And I was hanging out in Philadelphia, and I was like, sure, why not? I lucked out. Liz is awesome. Everyone in my year, we're just a great group. I'm just super lucky. I should thank some professors. Shanti was my first mentor, and she got to be the first person to tell me to slow the fuck down with my work, which was awesome. Rebecca Bloyd always asks the best questions. I want to thank Matt Irabarne for being the kind of professor who keeps a picture of Sid Vicious in his wallet. It's true. I found it the other day. I wasn't picking his pocket or anything. Matt Stillity for being more excited about comics than me. So that was a surprise and awesome. Amy Fawn for running the best, most organized workshop. And Eric Olson for running the best, most disorganized workshop. I better start reading this because I still have all these pages. This is a book about this guy Rabbit. He's in therapy. Chapter 1, Fortunate. In the split second before impact, all Rabbit could think was pea soup. A Volkswagen microbus was screeching through the intersection of First and Davis, about to plow him into the asphalt, and all he could think was it was the exact same shade as the pea soup that Billy had left sitting out overnight. And sadly, this was probably going to end up as his last meal. Even as his leg muscles clenched in his stirrups and his tires hydroplaned, skid-spitting street water in a sickening attempt to stop short, Rabbit felt overcome by the certainty that this was it. It was all about to be over. Wet metal kissed him full on the lips. Brain matter pancaked against the inside of his skull, and neurons pop like flashbulbs someplace deep behind his eyes, triggering a vision, a constellation of exploding stars. And for the briefest instant, Rabbit felt a familiar weightlessness. He closed his eyes, relieved that at least this time, he was spared the humiliation of having to watch his life flash in front of him. Rabbit. He had other names to be sure, but Rabbit fit best. Had been hiding out in Portland for almost 2 years, which he knew wasn't such a bad run as far as these things went. But he would often drift to sleep, still feeling a little bit surprised that nobody had shown up yet to collect him or kill him. He'd stumbled into this soggy armpit of the country almost by accident, and before he knew it, had built something that, if you weren't looking too hard, could almost pass for a life. He could have run further, should have, he told himself, and would daydream of the South Pole, or one of those wildlife conservation ships, left to drift in a vast anonymous ocean, stopping here or there to save the occasional blue whale. These fantasies soothed him, dissuaded him from the nagging anxiety that no place could ever be far enough. Someone he knew would come looking for him eventually. By the time he'd come to, a calamity of tangled limbs and wet, rusty steel, Rabbit had lured a small crowd of gawkers out from the shelter of the Old Town Max station and into the muck. They crowded over him, holding umbrellas. The storm had crescendoed into an honest-to-jah, Noah's Arky deluge. Moisture coalesced over the blacktop, turning the roadway into a viscous cloud of dirty water, grit, and exhaust. Rabbit tasted blood and iron running between his lips. The only sounds that registered over the torrent were blurry Xeroxes of real voices, echoes from a distant planet rebroadcast through puddles, murmurs imploring him to lie back, be still, ignore the pounding in his chest, the rushing of blood in his ears. He tried to obey, but when Rabbit could discern the whine of a siren through the din of raindrops, he heaved himself up, pushing through a wave of dizziness that rippled through him like an aftershock. After a moment, the world resolved itself into an almost recognizable shape. His head was ringing, shaking, remembering the last time he'd been hit that hard. The driver of the VW, some post-hippie eco-mom soaked through in her yoga pants, was hyperventilating into a cell phone. "Came out of nowhere," she wheezed. "Oh my God, what a nightmare." "Take it easy, son," said one of the guys crowding him in. He was holding an umbrella in one hand and a phone in the other. "Ambulance will be here soon. Just ease back there." Rabbit took a breath like a shiv to the lung. "Disappear," he croaked. "What?" "Disappear," Rabbit said again, more for himself than the citizen. This was his motto. It was his mantra. It used to be a much, much easier trick to pull off. The ambulance finally pushed its way through traffic. Reflected light from the siren cut a slippery red lightning bolt across the watery surface of the road, and Rabbit could swear he felt the voltage. He got his feet underneath him and somehow shot up. "Sir, please." The man with the umbrella gripped him by the shoulder, trying to steady him, calm him. The driver spotted him teetering. "Oh my God, are you okay?" Rabbit honestly had no idea. He lived most of his life with a built-in safety net and could count on one hand the times that anything had made him bleed. But that was before he'd given up the life, before he'd lost the M word. "I could have killed you," said the yoga mom, in an octave still too polite to be called a shout, more like a public service announcement. "Just so you know, typical Portland." Rabbit took a step, then another. Each one seemed like a fluke. He'd fall forward only to catch himself with his spindly scarecrow legs again and again until there was momentum. Hands reached out to grab him. He pushed them off and almost tripped over the mangled frame of his bicycle. Not even thinking, he snatched it up on his shoulder and without another word, broke into a flat run. Pounding the puddles, letting himself be swallowed up by the storm, it had seemed like a clean getaway. Rabbit sprinted down ghost town streets, past huddled lines of homeless alcoholics who haunted every awning and dry doorway like thirsty specters. They howled as he streaked past. To spook him or cheer him on, Rabbit wasn't sure. He turned onto Davis, almost spilling onto the cobblestones. Rabbit panted and ran towards the light. He ran towards Louie's. The House of Louie was a dirtbag restaurant tucked away in the dregs of Chinatown. Somehow, despite the mediocre food and lazy service, the overall don't give a fuckitude of the place, it was almost impossible to not think of Louie's in all caps. The words lighting up the stucco loomed large in your head that way. They cut through the suffocating wet blanket skies with the buzz of toxic green and that color that couldn't make up its mind between pink and red. The facade was festooned with other tried and true signifiers of authentic Asian cuisine, right down to the chipped plaster dragon. Rabbit let the remains of his bike, he'd christened it Dave, clatter against his favorite rusty signpost, right under the gaze of the dragon, which he'd taken to calling Larry. Naming was an old habit. Dave was a wreck, pretzeled. The front wheel was folded over like a taco shell, which seemed appropriate since Rabbit's body felt like an ugly pile of ground meat. He eyed a nearby dumpster and released a long, painful breath that seemed to bubble up out of him. Dave had been his trusty steed ever since those awful Brooklyn nights when he'd first called it quits with the Big M. He'd ride for hours, huffing over the Williamsburg Bridge, past the Hasidic women on their midnight strolls, and all the drunks too broke for cab fare. He'd ride all the way to Coney Island or up to the Bronx, burning through all the fear and helplessness that had accompanied his latest attempt at a normal life. He'd return to his Dumbo studio well after sunrise, completely exhausted and barely able to remember his own name, much less that other word, the M word. Rabbit had lived his entire life thinking that one word was what defined him. With the M word on his lips, life had been bigger and brighter, exponentially more fun and more dangerous. But it revealed an ugliness too, lit up his world with a force as sublime and fleeting as lightning. The brights were brilliant, yeah, but it made the darks that much darker too. He swung back the lid of the dumpster and heaved Dave's cracked carcass inside. It looked sad, bent and broken, resting on a pile of hefty bags and rotting food. So long, Dave, He felt awkward. He hadn't planned to eulogize his bicycle, but Rabbit found himself flooded with the faces of other old friends, also lost, also broken. He felt the tightness in the back of his throat. He let the lid slam shut. Rest in peace, you son of a bitch. He turned to face Larry the lizard. It gaped at him stupidly, disapproval reflecting off its chipped enamel eyeballs and pale pink. Rabbit sneered back at it. What the hell are you looking at, asshole? The front bell chimed. Rabbit stamped his feet on the mat, shaking rain loose, and stepped down into the chilly restaurant, empty except for his coworker. He was late. Whoa, Pak Toy, you look like shit, man. Kelvin was hefting a bin of silverware. He went to PSU for business or accounting or some shit like that. I had an accident. No shit. Rabbit pressed the soaking hood of his sweatshirt against his upper lip, which was beating droplets of blood. What the hell are you doing here? You should have called out. Rabbit didn't own a cell phone, but only shrugged. I need the money, dude. No, you need a hospital. I'll be okay. No, man, I mean you're fucked up. Have you even looked at yourself? The phone rang. Lunchtime takeout. Shit. Just go clean your face. Kelvin picked up the line. House of Louie, can I take your order? Nah, pick up only. Rabbit spat red into the sink of the tiny green bathroom. He did look like shit. A pasty scarecrow man with bloody teeth. The vessels in one eye had burst, giving him a lopsided horror movie stare, and a reddish-brown scab seemed to cover his whole mouth. He ran his hands under the hot tap, splashing his face and trying to rub some warmth back into his skin. His stork-like frame was built with the bare minimum of padding. Everything hurt. Still, he was lucky. That lady in the Volkswagen was right. She really could have killed him. Crunch, snap, game over. Despite all the trouble he'd gone through to live a normal life, Rabbit still walked around like he was fucking invincible, headphones blaring. He didn't even own a helmet. He guessed, deep down he'd always believed that if he ever really needed it, like say when his peripherals were blinded by daytime headlights and the cartoon face of the Volkswagen came speeding at him like a smiley-faced death sentence, that the M-word would just come back to him, jostle itself free from whichever fold of gray matter he'd buried it in. The syllables would roll off his tongue like he'd never lost them and let loose that old explosion of stars. The 4th of July times Hayden's Planetarium times capital L lightning that would turn lead into gold, replacing him with a version of himself that was incorruptible, untouchable, unfuckwithable. But then, reality check. That wasn't what happened. When it came down to it, forgetting was just another kind of vanishing act. The M-word was gone. Magic was gone, and even when Rabbit needed it most, it refused to reappear. He slurped from the tap and swished, spat again, staining the porcelain. He bared his teeth at the mirror. You're a fucking idiot, you know that, right? That's when he noticed the cut. The clotting had held it together, but now, where the blood had been beating under his nose, he saw that his teeth must have cut clean through his face. He took a shaky index finger to his upper lip and pressed. The flesh peeled away in a 2-inch flap. The meat in the cross-section so bright and raw it made him think of sushi. He stared, fascinated by the cutaway view that exposed his upper gums and teeth like a death's head. What the fuck? Okay, so maybe he did need a hospital. Billy picked up on the 7th ring. As per usual with Billy Kellogg, nothing was ever cut and dry. But what do you mean, can I take you to the hospital? Jesus, Billy, do I stutter? The hospital. Yeah, the Emmanuel ER. Just come and get me, huh? I'll even throw you gas money. Are you, actually hurt? Rabbit's housemate somehow managed to sound more hurt than he felt. I'm okay. Jesus, really? How? Is it bad? Bill, I'm fine. The line went quiet. Rabbit waited, fingers pressed to the Band-Aid that was holding his upper lip in place. So, are you going to come get me or what? Okay, Billy said finally, but he paused again. Is this like a code or something? Billy! Fine, I'll leave now. Rabbit sighed, relieved. Cool, thanks, man. He was about to hang up and caught himself. Oh, hey, Bill, one more thing. Yeah? No tights. Billy's Toyota pulled up to the curb and Rabbit lurched out from underneath the pagoda-style awning towards the passenger door. But Billy was already getting out. Hey, he said, and then pulled up the hood of his second-hand North Face and jogged right past Rabbit and into the house of Louie. He left the car running. Unbelievable, Rabbit muttered. Billy returned minutes later with a steamy plastic bag filled with styrofoam-encased slop. Yo! Rabbit quit fiddling with the tape deck. You ordered food? Yeah, on the way over I decided I was hungry. You want some? Billy's farm boy face got all kinds of eye-bulgy. Dude, your face! Yeah, I know. It's why I called you. Rabbit spoke carefully, aware that the wrong push of the tongue could make his face come apart at the seams. Billy was usually a motor mouth, but he looked genuinely freaked, and Rabbit took advantage of the silence. Just drop me at the ER. You don't even have to come in. Billy obliged, stepping on the gas without so much as a peep. Soon, the house of Louie was a dim glow in the rear view, but Rabbit couldn't shake the feeling that the place wasn't done with him yet. Even as they drove off, he could feel the eyes of that dragon boring into the back of his head. He sunk into his seat, sucking his teeth, watching the rain. Billy dug through his bag of takeout one-handed as he drove. Oh, hey, I got you this. He tossed Rabbit a fortune cookie. Hate to break it to you, but this is not the ideal snack for a guy with severe facial lacerations. I thought maybe the fortune would cheer you up. Something for the collection? You've got to stay posy, dude. Rabbit did have a thing for fortune cookies, or for the fortunes anyway. Just not the ones with cheerful patter that Billy had in mind. Working at Louie's, Rabbit had built up a little collection, always setting aside the prefab divinations that strayed from the predictable forecasts of long life, good health, blah, blah, blah. Rabbit preferred dessert time real talk like, the key to happiness is lowering your expectations. Or unlikely prognostications with staggering sociological implications like, maybe next century we live on moon. Maybe we would, Rabbit thought. Stranger things had indeed happened. But when Rabbit cracked the cookie open, shaking the fortune loose from the sugary cardboard, he found something else, something he'd been half expecting ever since he woke up on the blacktop with a broken face. He unfolded the little paper and looked at the neat red print for a long time. Eugene, you need to call me. I need to know if you're still in one piece. Please call. He turned over the little scrap of paper and found that the lucky number was her home phone, same as when he was a kid, as if he wouldn't remember. Thanks, guys. So now I guess I'm supposed to let Amy Fan come on stage and invite all of you to come hang out with us. Do I just click? Just click. Yeah, come to the Writer's Studio. Even though we're graduating, we're planning on not leaving. We're just going to occupy Daharo Street. I invite you all to come and hang out. Thanks, guys.
So hopefully this gives you a good map on where to go for the reception, or just grab onto an MFA student and just follow them. I want to thank our readers, our fabulous 6 readers. I'd like to thank our fantastic faculty, our program manager, David Marini, the friends and family who've come out, and our first-year committee who has put together this and organized this Word World series. We hope you'll join us for our next 3 Word World series, and see you soon. Come join us. Bye.